On the morning of December 26, 2004, people across the Indian Ocean basin noticed a peculiar sight. The ocean seemed to have receded, leaving great swaths of wet sand uncovered. Scores of locals and tourists in places like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand went to explore the exposed sand, to catch fish or to pick up seashells. But as they marveled at the unusual natural phenomenon, many began to notice a strange roaring in the distance. The sea, a stripe on the horizon, had begun to move back toward land, quickly. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, also known as the Boxing Day tsunami or the Asian tsunami, had begun. Over the next 7 hours, it would wreak devastating destruction across more than a dozen nations, while waves as tall as buildings and moving as fast as jet planes smashed into the shore. In Thailand, one local survivor later remembered fleeing the waves on motorbikes with her family, only to have a wall of black water, frothy with debris, catch up with them. Elsewhere in the country, a tourist woke up to find water rushing under her door, then watched the waves fling her husband the length of a football field as she was submerged under the waves. The worst natural disaster to occur in the 21st century, and one of the worst natural disasters in recorded human history, had begun with an earthquake deep in the ocean, one so powerful that its force was equal to more than 20,000 atomic bombs. The massive quake triggered the tsunami, which first hit Indonesia before smashing through beaches in Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and several other countries. The tsunami was even felt as far away as Africa. More than 100,000 people were killed in Indonesia, the hardest-hit nation, as well as tens of thousands in Sri Lanka and India, and thousands more elsewhere. Overall, the 2004 tsunami left a staggering death toll of 230,000 people and displaced more than 1 million. This is the story of how the tsunami unfolded, from the powerful early morning quake that struck on December 26, 2004, to the deadly waves that pummeled a dozen nations across the Indian Ocean basin, leaving scores dead and survivors reeling in the aftermath of an unthinkable tragedy. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
Today, we're discussing the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the worst natural disaster of the 21st century to date. I have a really strong memory of this happening. I think I mentioned this at some point in an outro or something, but my family was traveling on the 26th. We were somewhere for Christmas, coming home. And in the airport, every newspaper was like, tsunami.
Yeah.
It was such big news. And I was old enough at the time, I was 14, I think, that I could understand what it meant, this loss of life. 200,000 people and all these horrible stories were coming out and really dramatic. And it was 2014, so people had the ability to film this stuff and to spread it online.
2004.
2004. To document it basically and for it to appear on the internet. So,
right.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't have a strong recollection of this, but I was also 8 years old at the time.
Yeah.
I think I was probably more concerned with other stuff like Pokemon or something.
Basically this tsunami was devastating for a lot of different reasons, but one of the big ones was that there was no warning system in place. And that's because between 1852 and 2002, though there were 50 tsunamis like in this region, only 7 of them resulted in any fatalities.
Wow.
And in over a century, some 50,000 people were killed, which is a lot, but over a century, it's kind of like spread out. And
Right.
It was a thing that happened, but it wasn't like Japan, where maybe people thought like they needed this warning system in
Japan
place.
gets like wrecked by
Earthquakes,
tsunamis and earthquakes pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And it being like a small island nation, it's like the infrastructure is different there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of islands were affected during this one too, but they just didn't have that same system in place. So basically, they didn't have this warning system in place, and then this like huge earthquake happens on December 26th in the morning at around 8 a.m. These two tectonic plates, the Indian tectonic plate and the Burman microplate, crashed against each other. This is near the Indonesian island of Sumatra. And it ruptured a 900-mile stretch of ocean floor which created an earthquake that lasted for 10 minutes,
Whew.
9.1 magnitude earthquake. It's like basically like earth shaking.
Jeez.
Um,
Because you have family in Seattle, have you ever
mhm.
experienced an earthquake? Did we talk about this before?
Yeah, and I think it was 2000.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the big one, but it was like what people thought a big one for Seattle. And I remember that like happening. And
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, my parents live on an island. And at the time they were worried that the ferry dock had like shifted too much for the
Mm.
ferries to like get back to the
Oh,
island. But
wow.
they
Yeah.
decided it was fine. But yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah. Because as a lifelong Pennsylvanian, I've never experienced a earthquake or really any natural disaster of like great import.
Last year there was an earthquake in New York. Was it not
Mhm.
felt other places in the East Coast?
Not Pittsburgh at the very least.
Hmm. It's weird. I mean, it's the one in Seattle, 6.8. So like pretty big. This obviously was much bigger, being
Yeah.
9.1.
The only article I could find very quickly with a quick Google search, rumble from a magnitude 5.8 earthquake felt in Pittsburgh, August 24th, 2011.
That's sort of recent. The rumble maybe means it wasn't felt
Yeah,
very strongly.
it was like rumble from a 5.8 magnitude. So I was like,
Yeah.
we didn't experience the 5.8 magnitude. We felt like an aftershock. So
Yeah. I mean, Seattle too is like one of those places where if it's not going to be an earthquake, it's going to be like a tsunami. And if it's not going to be a tsunami, it's going to be like Mount Rainier exploding or erupting, or, all of the above. Beautiful place to live otherwise.
right.
Yeah. Anyway, in this one, this 9.1 earthquake begins at 8 a.m.
This is for my sake, it is the scale is out of 10, right? For
I think so.
earthquakes.
Yeah. You never hear something higher than 9 that I've heard. I think 10 is theoretically the top, but
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Theoretically possible.
so
But
9.1 is pretty big.
whew, yeah.
This sort of a powerful earthquake is probably the result of all this like tension that's been built up over just like centuries.
Right.
And the
Jeez.
energy released by this earthquake was 23,000 times more than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. So it was like, I
Wow.
mean, just picture that underwater. It was enormous. And there was, no warning system in place. So while this was happening, people didn't know there was going to be a tsunami, but it displaced a huge amount of water. The tsunami began, and these waves, some of which were they were 167 feet tall, moving 500 miles an hour, were like
Oh
rushing
my.
towards shore.
I think it's hard to imagine. For me, at least, it is like 167 feet high. Like just hearing that number, I'm like, that doesn't sound that high.
Yeah.
So I looked up just like what's the average height or that height of like a normal 2-story home,
Hmm.
just for like comparison, about 25 feet. So this would be like, I don't know, 8 houses stacked on top of each other in height.
Like a 8-story apartment
Or
building.
like, yeah, I guess that's probably a better, yeah, like an
Yeah. Yeah.
8-story
It's
apartment
huge.
building. Yeah,
It's huge. Imagine that coming at you
at 500
from the
miles an
water.
hour.
This would strike ultimately Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, as well as
Whew.
places even as far as Africa and Australia. Um, but first, it hit Indonesia, and then basically it continued for 7 hours. It just like spread.
Oh,
Obviously, it lost, kind of power as it got further and further from the epicenter, but still powerful. It killed people like in Australia just who
right.
were like
Wow.
swimming because these big waves came. But the first place it struck was the city of Banda Aceh on the Indonesian island of Sumatra, which was struck first about 20 minutes after the earthquake hit the ocean floor, so still really early in the morning. People felt the earthquake, but it's like an earthquake. Okay,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
scary, but not so bad. In this case, this was one detail about the tsunami that I read when I was uh, like a kid that really stuck with me was that first the water recedes. And so what people did, no one knew that this was a sign. So they all went down to look at the sand,
Oh,
this exposed sand, because they were looking, at the shells and all these like fish and things, and it was just unusual. So then they were basically,
right at the edge of where it was going to come in.
yeah, totally just doomed.
So that is really interesting. So like, yeah, I guess just the force of it pulls all the
Hmm.
water back and then just kind of brings it
Pushes it
back
back in.
pretty hard.
People who survived it described these black waves as big as mountains just pummeling the shore. This was a city of 320,000, and 100,000 people were killed in seconds,
My
like
God.
obliterated.
A third of the population.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
This is an island, country, and so whoosh.
Oof.
Yeah, well, a local who survived said, it was like weird, loud thunder. We were unsure about what it was, so we went outside and could see these huge waves coming from afar. Then we all started running, trying to find higher ground. Another person said, I remember the wave was really black. At first, we weren't sure if it was oil or water. I thought my children and I were going to die. And this person, their family, gets on the roof of their house, and from the roof, they say they could see people floating in the water, and just started to like pray that they would survive.
Oof.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, this powerful wave destroyed buildings, it pushed boats into land, and not only killed people on impact, but swept people out to sea. And this Indonesia ultimately suffered the highest casualties with 160,000 people killed pretty much like right away as soon as its tsunami hit.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that it doesn't hit Sri Lanka and Thailand until 2 hours later. But because there was no warning system in place, there's no warning, like still.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not like as you're being barraged by the tsunami, you're like, oh, we should probably call Thailand and let them know it's on its way.
Yeah, there was like no, even if someone was like, we should warn someone, there was no like office they could call. There was nothing set up for this
Right.
communication to happen. And, it was 2004. People like had cell phones, but it wasn't like
Yeah.
now where you
Yeah. It
could
wasn't like instant, like
post
live
on
feed
Instagram.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So in Sri Lanka, the tsunami comes without a warning, just like in Indonesia. And just like in Indonesia, it starts with the water receding more than half a mile and then coming back. Here, with waves as high as 30 feet, which is, again, still pretty high.
Yeah. That's a house,
That's a
like
house,
that's a
yeah.
normal home flying at you.
hmm There were a lot of tourists in the area because it was the day after Christmas,
Sure. Yeah.
and mostly European tourists. One British tourist described it as whitewater and chaos that crashed into a guest house he was sharing with his wife. He said, I leapt out of bed to the window to see a great wall of white water, as tall as our single-story building. The very next second, the waves smashed through the front wall. The last I saw of that room was the roof dropping down on us before we were washed out the rear wall of the building. They were pushed by the wave almost 500 feet into the jungle. Like, whoosh,
Wow.
just,
Wow.
yeah. Sri Lanka was also the site of a really terrible tragedy where the tsunami hit a train, knocked the train off its tracks, submerged the train in water, and
Oh,
killed 1,700 people on board. Which,
it's a lot of people on that train.
yeah, it's like a nightmare.
Wow.
Sri Lanka, the death toll is also very high, 35,000 people, as well as tens
Oof.
of thousands of buildings, which, like, it's 35,000 people. Like, that's like my hometown, basically, just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
At around the same time, Thailand is also hit by the tsunami, just like in Sri Lanka, just like in Indonesia, there was no warning. And, the exact same thing happened. The waves receded and people went out to look at the sand. And then the tsunami hits. So, not good.
Hmm.
The waves here came in at, 500 miles per hour. One area recorded waves over 60 feet high.
That is
Uh,
remarkably fast. 500
yeah,
miles
as
per
fast as a
hour.
jet plane, they said.
Wow. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you think about like when a car flies past you at like 65 on the highway or whatever, and you're like, dang, that's fast.
right.
And like
Yeah.
almost 10 times faster than that.
It's just the incredible power of this earthquake. Was
Right.
one local who survived described it as a black wave coming from the sea. A tourist who survived while her friend
Mm.
perished said, once we were inside, we began to hear some rumbling. Then, in the next instant, a wave came through the wall, and I felt like I was being hit by a Mack truck.
Oh,
So,
yikes. Yeah.
yeah, just that impact would
That would rattle you.
that would probably break some bones, if not
I would imagine. Yeah.
kill you. Yeah.
Isn't that what
Uh,
they say like about people who like fall from a great height into water, that it's basically the same as hitting concrete when you get there?
yeah.
So like that much, yeah, I mean that much force just flying through the wall at you. Not to mention all the debris from the wall.
Yeah. And the debris the water is carrying in as well. Yeah. An advisor to the Thai prime minister was there with his wife and three children. He described the waves as being like Niagara Falls.
Wow. Is he referring to like the height there or
Just the force.
before? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thailand, 5,400 people died. Of
Wow.
these, some 2,000 were tourists because there were just so many European tourists there at the
Ugh.
time. Yeah. I think that's why it's also called the Boxing Day tsunami because
Mm,
people were there like during this, the day after Christmas
right.
holiday.
Yeah.
That said, there were some miracles. There was a 2-month-old baby who survived being swept out of his home. He was called Baby 81 because he was number 81 on a hospital admission registry, and
Wow.
rescuers found him in the mud and were able to reunite him with his parents.
Wow.
So that's pretty amazing.
What's he up to now?
I think there was an article I saw that he had like graduated from college or something. So he seems like he's doing all right. Harrowing
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
life.
The AP, the Associated Press, wrote an article about him just this past December, actually.
Hmm. I
20
think that
years,
makes
20 years
sense.
after. Yeah.
Yeah, the anniversary.
Yeah. He's about to go to college. Trying to see if they actually named his Jairasa Abilash. I'm probably not pronouncing it perfectly right, but that's his actual name.
It's just amazing to think that a baby could have survived
Yeah.
that.
Was he in like a rocker or something that would have floated on the water? Or he must have been.
I don't know. I mean, he was found in the mud,
Oh yeah,
but
interesting.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but able to survive.
That is yeah, a miracle, if nothing else. That is crazy.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in India, some 10,000 people were killed, mostly women and children. One thing I read was that at this time, a lot of men were like they were fishing communities. So they were
Mhm.
out on the water, and women and children were at home. And being on the water, I guess you were protected somewhat from this
Right.
because the tsunami isn't like, it's not like a wave that goes over you. It's kind of a wave that like goes towards you.
Right. So I mean, yeah, being on a boat probably gives you a little bit of an advantage there already because you're
Yeah.
on a thing made to float on water.
It might not save your life, but maybe give you a better chance of surviving.
Yeah, versus like just being in your home hit unexpectedly.
Yeah, you're home on the beach probably if your
Right.
husband or father is a fisherman.
Right.
Meanwhile, Myanmar, the Maldives, Malaysia, even villages in Somalia suffered from casualties as these waves kind of hit everywhere. And yeah, it didn't end until 7 hours after that initial earthquake when it hit South Africa, where at least 2 people died who were like in the water, swimming or
Yeah.
so.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the worst or the deadliest natural disaster in the 21st century and one of the most deadly in recorded human history, which is pretty wild to think about just like how long recorded human history is. And, like we all
Yeah.
lived through this.
Yeah. I part of that probably is just a population thing also.
Hmm.
Like there's just more people on Earth. So when a big disaster like this rolls through, it's natural that more people are going to be affected by it.
Yeah,
Especially in like that region of the world. I mean, India's population alone is crazy.
that's
So
true. Yeah, it's densely populated places.
not to like downplay the fact that a lot of people died. I'm just saying I think part of that is just the fact that there were more people to die.
Hmm. Yeah, 250,000 died. Like that's
Yeah.
really hard to even envision. It's
Right.
many people obviously drowned, many more were killed by debris in the
Hmm.
water. And, in some places they might have felt the earthquake, but other places didn't feel the earthquake. So to them, it
Right.
was just this total, it came from absolutely nowhere. And of course, in the aftermath, this was also deadly to a lot of people because there was no clean water, there was no medical care in some places. There were remote regions that were hard for rescuers to reach.
Hmm.
So more people died in the aftermath as well. And 1.7 million people were displaced from their homes because their homes were destroyed
Right.
by the tsunami.
Ugh, yeah. Wow.
I know it gets worse and worse. The United Nations created a $6 billion relief fund, most of which went to Indonesia and Sri Lanka. And in 2005, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission established the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System to alert 27 countries in case of tsunamis. So
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
that's good. So
We've got there
if this were
eventually.
to happen again, at least there would be some warning.
Yeah. I imagine
Yeah.
they in the rebuilding probably ramped up some of the anti-tsunami infrastructure as well, just like in terms of like actually fortifying buildings in certain ways and whatnot.
Yeah, and they've, given instructions on, like, what to do. That's been more
Right.
like a public service thing. Although it seems like some places, if this earthquake hits and then 20 minutes later there's a tsunami, there's not really all that much you can
Right. I mean,
do, especially if
yeah,
it's as
other
big as
than,
this
like,
one.
not go down to the beach.
I think that was a tsunami fact that stuck with me at least, and, yeah, don't go to the beach, even if
Yeah.
it
Or if
looks.
you or yeah, I guess if you live near a beach, like, Amber, our coworker who occasionally comes on for History Happy Hour segments here, she lives in Florida, so, like, near a beach, presumably, at least a little bit. If you see the
Mhm.
water receding, maybe go home, hunker down.
Find higher ground if you
Yeah.
can. The videos of this are really. I remember thinking that what I would see was, yeah, like a wave kinda, like, going over places, but it's really not. It's like a wall that, like, moves in, and it moves very quickly, and then people are just, like, totally submerged by the water.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just because calling it like a you have a certain vision in your mind of what a wave looks like.
Mhm.
And you yeah, like you said, you'd imagine it's this giant thing that's kind of like threatening to topple over that goes up over you. It's like, no, it's just like a massive wall of water.
Yeah. Completely unstoppable and filled with debris, because 'cause it's been pulled out and bringing in boats, and the further it goes in, the more it brings in, like, cars and pieces of houses and yeah, just, like, so deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of fours, it's moving very fast.
Mhm.
Whew, yeah, I'm looking at pictures now of just like the aftermath, and that is insane.
It's really, yeah.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. It's almost hard to wrap your mind around that this sort of destruction could just kinda come without any warning and kill so many people and destroy so many places in not very much time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's just the same thing could be said about any real natural disaster.
Mhm.
It's just like, wow, yeah, there's a photo just on the Wikipedia page of it coming through Thailand, and you can just see people are like on the beach. They don't look prepped at all, and then there's just so much water
Yeah.
flying at them.
Right. I don't know if you're watching White Lotus, but
I'm half watching it. My girlfriend's watching it, and I like pay a little bit of attention.
I just started the new season and there is like a very, very small storyline about this tsunami where one of the
Oh,
characters is like he's showing his mom like videos of it. And he's like, this happened just like one beach over from us because they're in
oh,
Thailand.
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So this was, yeah, one of the worst disasters ever and definitely did stick with me.
Yeah, just 20 years ago too. I mean, that's very insane to think about.
Yeah. That's why there were all those articles in
Yeah,
December about it. It's like the anniversary.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, it is weird to think how quickly this happens.
Mhm. Yeah. The only thing that, like, is a little bit similar and not in scope, but just kind of in being a tsunami disaster is, Fukushima. There was,
Hmm.
like, that nuclear it was an earthquake and then a tsunami, and, there were similar videos at the time of, like, water rushing in to the city and, you could see it going over cars, and I think that might have been a little bit later because I feel like those
That
videos
was
were.
2011, the
Yeah.
Fukushima disaster.
I feel like there were more videos of, like, better quality
Yeah,
because more people, I think, had phones where they
that
could
was that was
record it.
also a magnitude 9 earthquake.
Oof. Yeah.
I kept thinking of it throughout this episode too, but there's a movie called like an anime movie, very like Studio Ghibli esque, but different company, called Suzume. And
Mhm.
like a big plot line of that incident is, or of that movie is relating to the Fukushima disaster.
Oh.
And they reference it a lot in the movie. They just call it like 3/11 in the same way we would say 9/11
Oh,
because it happened in
interesting.
March 11th, 2011. So
Oh, wow. Huh.
I don't know
That's
if
really
that's like a
interesting.
common thing in Japan that they think that like 3/11 is like a big thing, but at least in that movie it was. So
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that had the nuclear component to it as well, so there was a whole
yeah,
other
yeah.
layer to that disaster.
Which I don't know. Maybe we could do an episode on that at some point because that's
That'd be a good one too.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember living in Seattle. Like, in Seattle, there's, like, a fear that the big one is gonna strike because Seattle, like San Francisco, is, like, on these, like, 2
Hmm.
plates, and so if that were to strike, it would probably be very bad, and, I lived in a brick building at the time, and I remember thinking, like, "Earthquake happens, like, this building is going down." Although, like,
Yeah.
Seattle has, like, reinforced a lot of its buildings, and there are, like, codes in place to, Yeah. Even in New York last year when there was a small earthquake, it was
Mhm.
so startling 'cause you don't expect an earthquake here. I was like, I wonder if my building is pretty new, and I read that new buildings, like, generally after, like, 1990 or something, are built for earthquakes, but before
Right.
that, they're not, because why would they be? There aren't really earthquakes here.
Right, right. Yeah, our house is from the 1950s. I don't imagine there's much earthquake resistance in it. Because
Probably
again,
not. It's
I
like
when has, like, Pittsburgh ever been hit with a bad earthquake?
there was, when I visited the National Cathedral in DC a couple years ago, there's a bunch of scaffolding up there, and, there was an earthquake in DC. I don't
Mm,
remember when exactly but the cathedral didn't have earthquake insurance because why would you have
right,
it? There's never earthquakes in DC. But there was an earthquake and it was damaged, and the cost to repair the damage was astronomical, so it was still getting repaired when I was there.
ugh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you live in Tornado Alley, right, you're gonna have a lot of reinforcement in your house for tornadoes, but, like, other places,
Mhm.
probably not because not that common outside of those areas, but still can happen.
Yeah, well, and natural disasters seem to be getting, bigger and behaving differently. Like the
Right,
fires in LA are a good example of kind of no one that's a fire prone area, and yet all these homes were like not prepared for that.
right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, natural disasters are scary. It's not something that I think about often, again,
right.
likely just because of where I live, but, yeah, it's a scary, unpredictable thing.
It is. Yeah. I don't think about it very much either. I think New York, like, I don't know what could happen here. I guess there's been like big storms and like Sandy and things where,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, we get like flooding or whatever, but like, or even like, I mean, it wasn't a natural disaster. I'm not going to like go as far as to say it was that extreme, but like last summer, there was that really bad heat wave that hit the eastern United States, and the winds for like 20 minutes around our house were so intense that like it wasn't storming, it wasn't raining, it was just hot and windy.
hmm,
But then a tree fell in our neighborhood as a result, and our power was out for like 3 days,
ugh,
and when it
yeah.
was like 100 degrees. And again, that also just, that came out of nowhere, and that wasn't even a disaster. It was just like a heat storm.
Right, yeah, sometimes you can't really predict these things, and
Right.
so Mount St. Helens erupted, like, for weeks before they, like, thought it was going to, but they weren't, like, sure,
Hmm.
and as, the weather was getting nicer and everything, there was pressure to open the camp area because it hadn't erupted, it was just kinda, like, making some noise, and,
Right.
like, how long are they gonna keep this area closed, and there was, like, they didn't know what was gonna happen, and then, of course, it did erupt, and it was good they hadn't opened that area, but nature can still be very mysterious. We don't know
Yeah.
everything about it by far.
Yeah. Even when you think, you're like, okay, well, we know where the plates are now, so we should reinforce those areas, or we can tell that this volcano is active or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you still never fully know.
Yeah, I think, like, the warning system is better, like, everywhere now.
Yeah, sure.
I know my brother is in LA, and when I've been with him there, whenever there's an earthquake, even a small one, he gets an alert on his phone,
Hmm.
and, like, I'm sure everyone in LA does. I have to say when the earthquake happened in New York, it happened, and then, like, 30 minutes later, I got an alert being like, "There's an earthquake, get under your desk," and I was like, "Cool."
Great.
Very helpful. They just weren't prepared for it because there aren't earthquakes here.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, even now you get warnings on your phone just about like flash flooding if it's raining hard or whatever.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we all have these, like, warning devices in our pockets now,
Right. But back then it was like Nokia flip phones and stuff. You weren't really,
right. Yeah.
yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I guess I will add too that and maybe this is a good segue to our, like, outro, but this episode idea came from a
Mm,
listener. I think it was an email saying that they were learning about the tsunami, they were curious about it, and we were like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good, interesting episode," because, you know, it's such a big, natural disaster.
it was a dad and his 10-year-old daughter who listened to the podcast,
Hmm.
which I didn't know we had young listeners.
Yeah, I didn't
So
either.
that's
That's cool.
cool. And I apologize for anything I may have said in the past that was controversial for that. But he said she would love to hear an episode on either the 2004 ocean tsunami, Indian Ocean tsunami, or they also mentioned the Fukushima meltdown and that
Mhm.
tsunami as well. So
Yeah.
they said, we hope maybe these make the cut one day. This one has, and I would be interested in talking about the Fukushima incident at some point as well. So maybe
Yeah.
both.
I think that'd be a good one. I don't think we've actually covered very many natural
Mm-mm.
disasters.
No, we haven't. The problem is I felt like I'm sitting here and I'm like, what can I add as you're telling me about it? I'm like, I guess I can just be like, ooh, ow, that's a lot of people. That sucks.
Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, natural disasters are fascinating because they're so tragic and dramatic, and ones, in the 21st century especially are recorded. They're on
Hmm.
film more than, things have ever been in the past, so,
Right.
or more, yeah. So, yeah, it's just a lot to talk about, and it's more visceral because we can see these photos and videos of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the videos especially, it's like you can really see the full impact of it.
Yeah, and some of them are really disturbing because you see people in the videos and you're like, "That person is, like, not gonna make it," because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know what to say beyond that, but
Right. Yeah. I'm like, there's no takeaway from it, really. It's just like,
yeah, I
don't be,
hope
yeah.
to never experience a tsunami. Earthquakes are kinda scary enough. Even when that earthquake happened, I was anxious. I was, like, freaked out that my building was gonna collapse around me, and it wasn't even
Well,
that big
sure. Yeah.
of an earthquake last year, but it's like your whole world is literally kinda turned upside down because you don't it's so outside your normal, like, day-to-day experience of, like, living as, like, a
Right.
human
Right.
in the world with, like, rules and, like, things happen a certain way, and then nature decides to throw up its hands and
Yeah. Just be this unpredictable sort of,
yeah, it's really
yeah.
scary.
Most things you can kind of prepare for. Like if your country is at war, you're like, well, maybe we, sound the, what do? We sing songs about ducking and covering in case of
Right, yeah.
nuclear fallout or whatever. And like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
you
you have a
know kind of what the
plan.
situation is, and there are
Yeah.
people telling you what it is, and this is just it's complete chaos and
Just, yeah.
disaster and death and, like, oof. Yeah,
Yeah. Scary stuff.
very
Scary
scary.
stuff. Hopefully we did the story some justice here to that listener. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone else enjoyed it too, but that person in particular. Hope you enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
thank you so much for writing in. We all really liked this idea, and I'm glad we were able to cover it.
Yeah. And our next episode is also a listener submission,
That's right.
which we will be talking about this dispute about the Canadian and American border that occurred.
I think it's historical disputes that have occurred between Canadians and
Hmm.
Americans.
Hmm.
It's a little bit topical at the moment as there's some stuff going on in politics,
Some
and
rhetoric about maybe making it the 51st state.
yeah, and like Canada and the US. I mean, I guess I don't know much about this at all, but they do have a long history of border disputes, and we're gonna
Yeah.
look into that and talk about it.
Yeah. That should be interesting. We'll try to keep it relegated to the past events, maybe more so than any
Right? Yeah.
commentary, other than like to any Canadian listeners, think you guys deserve to be your own country still.
Oh,
We're
Canada.
we're not all fans of this proposal.
Mhm.
I will say that.
Yeah, it should be interesting episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming up next. And I guess that would probably be History Happy Hour too, but
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if
yeah.
you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, follow on social media, History Uncovered Podcast on Instagram, Real History Uncovered on TikTok, which is still
Still
around,
kicking.
still
Yeah.
kicking. Yeah, follow us on YouTube. If you want to read more about any of the stuff we talked about, you can go to allthat'sinteresting.com, where we are constantly updating the site with new stories about all things historical and also like news updates about archaeology, weird true crime, etc.
Yeah. Mhm.
You can become a member there at allthat'sinteresting.com/membership. For just $5 a month, you get some bonus perks on the site. You also get access to what will be the second part of our next episode, which is History Happy Hour, where
Mhm.
we go over news, the most interesting news stories and historical anniversaries from like whatever month we're doing it in, or in this case, the next episode comes out early April. We'll be talking about stuff that happened in March.
Right, yeah, and there's gonna be some really good History Happy Hours this year because it's, with 1945, I think,
Hmm.
and yeah, the 80th anniversary of a lot of World War II
Yeah. Any of those, like,
stuff.
any years that end in a 0 or a 5 for like somehow always works
It's
out that
often
they're
historical
very
stuff then.
interesting.
Yes, yeah, in addition, you can also join our newsletter by going to allthat'sinteresting.com/sign up, and if you also have an episode idea or if you wanna say hello or, talk about your memories of the tsunami or, kind of anything. If you just want to get in touch, you can email us at podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com, or you can leave a voicemail at 929-526-3029.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of listener submission stuff lately, I feel like.
We have.
I feel like we used to have these episodes planned out like months in advance sometimes, or maybe like 2 months or so. We'd be like, all right, these are the next couple episodes we're doing. We already know ahead of time. But more recently, it's just been like, hey, someone suggested this. Would you guys be interested in that? And we're like, yeah.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of really good suggestions. I mean, the recent one we did was Joseph Stalin's Great Terror, and talking about kind of like the gulags and his terror.
Yeah. And it's cool too because I know we write and talk about history stuff a lot. I've never considered myself like a history buff. I write about stuff for work. I guess what I'm saying is the way I've always approached like the job is like I'm a writer first and like a history fan second. That being said, I do love learning about stuff, especially more so now as an adult than I did when I was a kid. But I have a lot of blind spots in my historical repertoire. So like when people write stuff in, I'm like, oh, I would have never even thought about that. Like I didn't know about the Great Terror thing until we talked about it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was really interesting to discuss.
The U.S. Canada one is a good idea because I guess I consider myself a little bit more history buff. I did study history in college and stuff, and I really like it. But I don't know anything about that stuff, so I'm excited to dig in and see what we can learn.
There's so much too.
So it's endless. Yeah.
How could you possibly know about everything, right?
It's impossible.
Yeah, I just remembered this morning someone on Spotify, because apparently you can message us on Spotify now or leave comments, which I didn't know you could do. But someone who goes by the name Sam on Spotify said they love the podcast. They listen to it during school. Pay attention at school, Sam. But they wanted us to cover the murder of Selena, which I didn't realize Quintanilla was the artist Selena's last name until I did a quick Google. But would like us to talk about the murder of Selena. That is also on the calendar. That's coming up as well.
That's coming up, yeah.
So there's the next 2 episodes for you.
Yeah, so we got some good ones and really interesting ones, I think. Which is great. Yeah. Keeping it interesting, as always.
Keeping it
always interesting.
All that's interesting.
Yes. So we'll be back in
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yes. And with that next episode with U.S. and Canada. Looking forward to it. Bring our maple syrup and our whiskey, Canadian whiskey. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Our what's a Canadian whiskey brand? Actually, that'll be perfect because we will be doing History Happy Hour where we always do a cocktail.
That's right.
So I guess we'll have to do something with Canadian whiskey maybe. Black Velvet, Crown Royal. I didn't know Crown Royal was Canadian. Wow. The more you know.
The more you know. Great.
Seagram's. That's right. I knew that. Oh,
Seagram's
Canadian
is Canadian?
Club. Duh. Canadian Club.
I didn't know that was Canadian. Now I do.
Now we do.
Great.
Yeah. So load up a maple syrup and Canadian whiskey.
Yeah.
You could probably just make a drink with those 2 things.
You probably could.
Like an old fashioned.
It sounds horrible, but
I think that sounds pretty good.
Maple syrup. I don't know. It sounds pretty sweet.
Actually, I know I've made a drink like that before because there's a coffee shop near me that sells like infused maple syrups. They have like a ginger maple syrup, and I've put that in cocktails before.
I love maple syrup. I love whiskey. I'm not sure I would like them together.
But you like a Manhattan or like an old fashioned, right?
I do. Yeah.
I mean, it's just you're kind of just replacing the sugar with maple syrup.
Maple has such a, I don't know. I mean, I won't knock it till I try it.
You got to try it now.
I probably won't try it, but we'll see.
Fair enough.
You never know.
Fair enough.
All right.
All right. Well,
we'll be back
until
soon.
next time, eh?